Hello beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, nice to meet you. My name is Yinka and this is True Crime Anniversary. Some are well known, worldwide, super famous cases that a lot of people who indulge in true crime will be very aware of. But others, like this one, barely made headlines outside their local area. We're going to dive straight in with this one because there's a lot to get into. It's June 15th, 1996. England are playing Scotland in Euro 96 and it is an epic match. Gascoigne does that over the head kick volley thing that's super famous. Shearer scores, you know the one. England win 2-0 and the whole country loses it. I know what you're thinking as well, that 1996 wasn't that long ago. I thought the same until I realised that it's almost 30 years ago and I had to go and lie down for a second. Even though I was super young and I wasn't celebrating in the streets, I do vaguely remember this football match. And if you've got an 8 as the third number in your date of birth, you probably remember it too. And side note actually, speaking of being old and not realising it, a couple of weeks ago, I got ID'd for something in the shop and I handed over my licence and the guy just glanced at it and he was a boy. The boy glanced at it and he barely looked and I questioned him about it and he told me that he saw a 1 and that meant that I was at least over the age of 25, which was very humbling. Anyway, it was a warm summer night and the pubs were packed. People were happy. It's the kind of golden evening that we don't get super often. And in Preston, which is in Lancashire, a 20-year-old Janet Murgatroyd was out enjoying it as well. She'd just finished college. She had a big European trip planned. Life felt wide open and she was celebrating England's win with her friends and everybody else. But while the country celebrated, Janet didn't make it home. And by the next morning, her family knew that something had to be terribly wrong. It wasn't like her. She wasn't the type of person to just disappear. So her parents started calling around and checking with friends. And when they realised that no one had seen her since the night before, they reported her missing. By midday on June 16th, their worst fears were confirmed. A dog walker spotted a body floating face down in the River Ribble, which is near the back of the Continental pub in Preston, and that body belonged to Janet. She had been beaten and she had been kicked and she had over 50 injuries, including a fractured jaw and a broken nose. The bruises on her face suggested that someone had covered her mouth, possibly, potentially to silence her. And tragically, I think most tragically in this case, a post-mortem revealed that she had actually been alive when she entered the water and her cause of death was drowning. And even now, that detail, I think for me and probably for everyone is so hard to hear because she fought and she suffered, but ultimately she lost that fight for her life. And there was something else that still, to this day actually, especially from the research that I've done, haunts and haunted investigators. And that was, Janet was wearing stone-washed Wrangler jeans, very 90s. You can imagine the pair that I'm talking about. I'll probably put a picture or something to show you the style that I was talking about. And they were missing. She had been wearing them when she left her friends, but they were not recovered, and to this day they have never been recovered. Police believe that they might have been taken by the killer, possibly as some sort of trophy, possibly because they had evidence of them and they were to be destroyed, but to this day they've never been found. From the moment Janet was found though, the police treated this, just as they should, as a murder inquiry. But despite the brutality of the attack, there was surprisingly very little to go on. There were no CCTV cameras, as you can imagine, in the 90s on the riverside footpaths where she was likely attacked. There was no clear forensic evidence at the scene, and this was due to, of course, her body being found in the water. And whoever had done this seemed to vanish into the night. A few people did come forward though. So 2 brothers reported that at around 1:30 a.m. on the night that Janet was attacked, they were crossing Penwortham Bridge, the same route that it's believed that Janet could have taken, and they heard what they described as a high-pitched wail from the bushes near the water. When they looked over, they saw a man crouching over something, but they couldn't see his face. They described him as wearing a light-coloured baggy shirt. By the time they got closer, however, the person who was there, they had gone. Another witness, and this is a really harrowing witness account, was a taxi driver. He came forward saying that he had seen a young woman being chased across the bridge by a man. Now, to this day, we don't know. We just think that that woman could have been Janet. Police launched a massive search of the area. There was a team of 50 detectives. They were assigned to the case. They took hundreds of witness statements. They ran appeals on local TV. They canvassed the town centre. They tried to piece together Janet's movements and identify potential suspects. But the most critical clue, and I can't double down and talk about this enough, her missing jeans. They remained elusive. Police also suspected that Janet had been the victim of a sexual assault because she was naked when she was found. But without forensic evidence, without a murder weapon, without her missing jeans, the trail eventually went cold, and that's where it stayed for almost 4 years. In August 1999, more than 3 years after Janet's murder, a man called Andrew Greenwood came forward and seemingly randomly, out of the blue, confessed to her murder. He confessed to killing her, and at the time, Greenwood was described as a lonely and desperate man who claimed that he had murdered Janet after she spurned his advances. His confession led to a trial in October 2002, but the jury failed to reach a verdict, resulting in a retrial the following year of 2003. And during the retrial at Liverpool Crown Court, Greenwood retracted his confession. So he stated that the information that he had provided was based on newspaper articles and television reports. No personal knowledge was there. Despite this, though, he was convicted of manslaughter. That felt like a resolution, at least for Janet's family, for the community, for the police who had put so much into working, investigating and solving this case, they thought. But in May 2004, that conviction was quashed on appeal. Now, the Court of Appeal found that the exclusion of certain evidence during the original trial affected the safety of the conviction. Now, I'm going to read this directly because I want to get it correct. So specifically, there were 2 other suspects that were arrested but not charged in connection with Janet's murder. Evidence related to one suspect's prior violent behaviour and forensic findings, such as Janet's blood on the suspect's clothing, was deemed inadmissible during Greenwood's trial. Now, just to break that down, that means that there were 2 people who were arrested in connection with Janet's murder. One of the people were found to have forensic evidence, blood, on their clothing, and that was inadmissible, meaning that the defence were not allowed to bring that to the attention of the jury and that to the attention of the court. The appeal court held that this exclusion impacted the fairness of the trial, leading to the overturning of Greenwood's conviction. I don't want to skate over, and I feel like I'm not skating over, but I don't want to skate over the fact that Janet's blood was found on someone. They were arrested. That was not allowed as evidence, and it meant that Andrew Greenwood went free, that his conviction was quashed. And what is probably one of the most frustrating things about this case for me, as somebody who's trying to deliver it, is that I have tried to find out what happened with that line of inquiry. I have tried to find out not just who that person is who was found with Janet's blood on their clothing, but if that investigation went anywhere, and there isn't much on this case. As always, I've put all of my research links in the description of this video, and please, if you have found anything that I have not found, and you can find out more about where that evidence led to and why it wasn't pursued by the police as this person being a viable suspect, or at least a person of interest, or why it was ruled out that her blood on his clothing or their clothing, because we don't know who they are, I know it's a man, wasn't taken as seriously as a confession that seemingly came out of nowhere, then put it in the comments and let's find this out together and let's get this information sort of out there, because I couldn't find it. And those people who were arrested before, they weren't charged as well. So it's been almost 3 decades since Janet Murgatroyd was killed, and still no one has been held accountable. Her family have had to live with the pain of not just losing her, but watching the case falter, which I think is doubly painful. A man confessed, he was convicted, that conviction was overturned, and a key piece of evidence, those missing jeans, has never been found. And a potential suspect, reportedly with her blood on their clothing, was never charged. Janet's death didn't happen in the shadows of history. This wasn't some long forgotten case from the 1920s, the 1940s. It was 1996. People, not me, had mobile phones, and DNA was a thing. I mean, the Spice Girls were topping the charts, and she was 20 years old. She had just finished college. She had a holiday booked. Her life was just starting, and it's really difficult to talk about this case without feeling as though she was failed. Her case matters, but justice is been denied because someone out there might know something, and the man who did this, or the people who did this, whether he was caught and released or never caught at all, haven't faced the consequences. So for me, I feel like 1996 wasn't that long ago, so maybe someone out there still knows something, and they might have remained silent for decades, and potentially they might not have been asked. So sharing Janet's story might be what brings answers finally, even all these years later. So if this case has moved you at all, give it a like, leave a comment, share it with someone. It helps keep her memory alive. But if you remember anything from that night in Preston, if you were in the area, if you were on Penwortham Bridge, if you were near the Continental Pub, or you heard something back then that didn't sit right and this jogs a memory, then you should contact Lancashire Police. And if you want to hear more stories like this, actually, before I say that, I'll put a link to Lancashire Police and numbers and stuff like that in the description. But if you do want to hear more stories like this, ones that still need a resolution and keep these people's names alive, subscribe. I cover true crime cases, some that are well known, some you've never heard of, but all of them still matter. So I'll see you later, and thank you for watching. And of course, check the description for everything that I've been blabbing on about.